Welcome to the Winning in Business podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Rissy, and I love talking to business professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs who are winning in business. Are you ready to reach your next level of success? If so, join us on the Winning in Business podcast as I interview entrepreneurs, business professionals, and leaders who share how they've risen to success. Before we begin, go ahead, hit subscribe and the notification button so you'll be notified each time a new episode is released. Plug in and settle in. You're about to be inspired to rise up to your next level of success. Welcome to another episode of Winning in Business. Today, I am here with Dorothy Erlanger, and I am so excited to have her as a guest. You all are going to learn so much today. Let me share a little bit about Dorothy. So Dorothy is the epitome of adapt, pivot, reinvent, and build. Starting from a highly successful corporate career, she formed her first consulting firm in 1984. Having built that to over $1 million, she relaunched as Erlanger Inc., with projects for major multinational working, training, speaking in over 25 countries. Her extraordinary ability to customize trainings, adapt to multicultural audience, and fluency in Spanish and Portuguese all contributed to her success. After beating ovarian cancer at the age of 50, Erlanger set out to become a triathlete. So today, Dorothy and her team focus on virtual event production, where she is uniquely positioned to guide speakers and professionals to a fabulous virtual event. She helps individuals leverage their strengths in presenting, while she utilizes her proven process for event success, from planning stages to post-event recommendations. Dorothy and her team manage security, flow, and interaction seamlessly so your team can be fully engaged throughout the event. Additionally, Dorothy excels in coaching individuals to use Zoom effectively, enhancing their presentation skills. Well, Dorothy, we all know that Zoom is one of the most used platforms today, so welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yes, I am so excited just to hear your journey and how you have been winning in business over and over and over throughout the years. So why don't you go ahead and start and just tell us how you got into what you do now from where you were. Give us the brief synopsis.
Right. Well, I had been doing loads of international training and also consulting in the pharma industry and so on for a long time. And I had started to do things more locally for personal reasons. And I hadn't really done much online. And then along came the pandemic. And but I was already using Zoom, and I quickly discovered that I had the ability, because of my speaking and training background, along with understanding the tech, that I really had a great position to be able to help out in production. And then people started contacting me and saying, can you do production for this, and so on. And out of that grew many times, let's say a coach is not going to hire a producer, but they need to be able to run a really good virtual meeting, and they need to make it productive, and it needs to be branded. And I can help people with that, but I'm also good at keeping it simple.
Yeah. And simple is key, right? I mean, when we talk about, especially when we talk about coaches and, we're doing 9 million things, we need simple for the things to be simple, right? And I think it's key that we also need people to come in and help us where we are not, it's not our expertise. So I love that. As you've been a business owner and just winning in business for so many years and throughout your success, I would just love for you to share, what are some of the tips, your ahas, that you feel like have really contributed to your success?
Well, from very early on, I would say, don't be afraid to go after the big fish. A lot of people look at a major corporation and say, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. But within that corporation, there are very specialized needs. And if you get to know the right people in the right niches, you will be brought in and you will be utilized a lot. Example, I did all of Abbott Labs marketing training worldwide for almost 10 years outside the US. They utilized all of those skills. They utilized my planning skills, my process, my training, and all of those things. And I often would be running a meeting where I had people of 10 different nationalities in the room. And except for Latin America, I would be running it in English. In Latin America, I occasionally ran programs in Spanish or Portuguese. But the point is, don't be afraid to go after the big fish. They really are doable. If you have one in, that's all it really takes. The other thing is,
let me ask you a question. Let's stop right there for a minute. The one in for you, do you have any great advice on the one in?
I would say what you want to do is you want to start communicating with and interacting with, especially in today's environment, with people who are executives, particularly if it's in sales or marketing. And I hate to say this, but not HR, because HR is the implementer, not usually the initiator of the types of programs that I was doing. And once you have that relationship, you start working with it. I would be using LinkedIn. I'd be writing things. I would be, if there was information or news about particular companies, I would be sharing it back to that company saying, I noticed this. It's so easy to do that today that really that is a great strategy.
Yeah. So really reaching out, putting yourself out there and adding value, like giving them some value.
Exactly.
To help them just connect and build a relationship with you.
Right. And the other thing, when you're looking at news about a company, if let's say you're targeting, say, 5 or 10 different companies, is look for where they're having some kind of problem. What are the pain points that they are needing to address? And does any of that fit with something that you do? That'll get a quick response.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, good. You were going to share your next point.
My next point was be willing to pivot. Be willing to make a change. I mean, my business when I started was 100% international training and consulting. My business today is 0% international training and consulting. And I've built other areas. So both in terms of where the market's going and where your life is going, be ready and willing to pivot. Look at the other areas where there are needs and make the change and work it out. One thing I would say, and this is a caution, is don't completely drop one area before you start building the newer area. It's a real temptation and it's a real danger.
Yeah. So keep the income from what you're doing.
Right.
Build the other, then drop it and
right.
keep going. Yes. And you had some personal experience about really having to pivot, correct?
Oh, yes. Well, I was in the midst of a lot of different projects when I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And guess what? You're not getting on an airplane when you have ovarian cancer. And so I was able to pivot into consulting on pharmaceutical process in R&D, which I know very well. And I was able to do that on the ground in person in the United States during that period of time. And that was really key, both in terms of obviously income, but also psychologically, because at least I was continuing to do something.
Yes. And you're cancer free.
I have 20 plus years, advanced ovarian cancer, cancer free. I'm beating the odds every day I'm walking around.
Yeah.
And I pay it back and I pay it forward. That's the other thing. I am extraordinarily active in patient advocate work where I get input on research before it gets to the protocol stage.
I love that. That's great. That's great. Okay. Thank you for sharing. Like I just got chills from that. So okay. And then what's your last tip?
My last one is, and this is one that's hard to do and it's hard to sustain. And I'm a perfect example of that, is always have your business goals, but also have what is it that you want to be doing for yourself? What's your personal enrichment? What's your personal relationship situation that's going on? What's your personal activities? And put it on your calendar or it won't happen. And when you're doing a yearly goal, I would say, is there some new area that I'd like to explore, and lay out a way to do that so you stay excited about that area as well.
Yeah, that is, that's one of the big things that I work with my clients on, is because that's something that happens when you love business, when you are a high achiever, a high performer, you love working, right? And you're called to it, you're passionate about it, and it's what you love spending your time doing. That's one of the reasons that you might stop relationships, taking care of yourself. And then other reasons can be, like my mom ended up having ankle replacement. And I'm an only child. And so my dad was also taking care of her, but it took both of us. She couldn't, stand up. She was non-weight bearing for 6 months, and it turned out to be more like 9 months. So it was a long process. And so that right there, then the other things fall off. If you don't have them scheduled, like you said, I mean, that's what my clients and I always talk about is you have to put anything that has to do with your relationships, your health, it goes in a calendar, just like an appointment with a business meeting, a prospect, whatever, like calendar it, right?
Yes. And I would add one more thing to that. Just like you might with your business where you owe something to your clients, create some kind of an accountability.
Yeah.
So in my case, I'm now going back into my training program, which for reasons we'll talk about later. And I realized that for me to, number one, do it well and not get hurt, and also for me to make sure that I put it in my calendar, I got a coach. And my coach sets up that calendar and he checks in with me, and he sees me swim periodically and stuff like that. So create some kind of an accountability. It could be somebody else you're going to train with, so you got to meet them at a certain time.
Yes.
Or it could be something a little more formal, like what I've done with a coach.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So for you, what challenges do you face as a business owner?
Well, it's always the challenge of reaching out for new business while you're doing business. And it's always a curve, and you just have to, and again, thankfully in today's environment, it's a lot easier to do this, is you need to have reach out sorts of communications going on, even if it's in the background on a regular basis, or you're going to be sitting there 3 to 6 months from now going, whoops, I got a big hole here. So that's certainly one. And the other is always the balance between personal life and getting your business done, because you can really get hooked into it. And I would say today, it's also a matter of think about your horizons of business, not just locally. I mean, even though I'm not traveling internationally at this point, although I would have no problem with it now, I have business relationships and production relationships that are not in the United States. And it's easy to do that today with the virtual environment.
Yeah. And I think that, to your point of keeping your pipeline full.
Oh, yeah.
When you keep I feel like it's easier to do nowadays because we have the internet and the capabilities to be talking to people around the world. So it's not just local. I mean, it can be national, it can be international of how you're filling your pipeline.
And the other thing is I would strongly recommend that if you look at that consciously and set up, say, a series of posts that you have scheduled, we can do that.
Yes.
And so it's a matter of, you don't have to be doing it every day. You could carve out a couple of hours at the beginning of each week and say, this is my 2 hours to do potential new client communications. And this is my 1 hour when I'm going to be getting on the phone. And those types of things, they bear fruit.
Yes. And automate, right?
Automate you can everything you possibly can. And also, frankly, I find ChatGPT is a great resource. I don't use the writing directly off of it, but it's a great way to generate ideas and titles.
Yes. Yes, I agree. It's looking at it to generate and then making it.
And then I write it.
Yes. Yes. So what are your goals coming up? And that can be in life and in business, both.
Well, goals coming up in business. I have already run once a program called Zoomies, which is a 3-part program that really equips people to run their own show and do it well. And it's not complicated. So for coaches or speakers who are doing smaller groups, and also, frankly, for just regular business meetings where you need to be branding that's part of your business strategy. And if you're not branding it and doing the right kinds of follow-ups from those meetings, you've got a missing piece in your business strategy. On the personal side, I actually decided last fall, just to pick myself up, to do a short triathlon. I hadn't done a triathlon in 2 years. And so I said, I'll do this short little thing here in town, which was like a 600-yard swim. And downriver, thank you, and a 12-mile bike flat, and a 5K, which I figured I could walk. Well, guess what? Out of that, I qualified for USA Triathlon National Championships this year.
Oh, Dorothy, that's amazing. That is amazing. You're like, I just did this little thing. And as you say, oh, biking flat. Okay, that's still a lot of biking and a lot of swimming. For those of us that don't do that, kudos to you. Congratulations. Yep. Okay, so now what?
Well, now what I did, the first thing I did is I got a coach to get me through this, because I need somebody who can deal with somebody who's frankly fairly out of shape. And I mean, I know not totally. And who can get me through without injury and can get me through some preliminary events as well. But, I did that. I mean, I started off going back a ways. I started off with that one little short triathlon to get myself out of depression following ovarian cancer, which is how I started. And I went from that all the way to doing an Ironman. And an Ironman is, and believe me, I won't train for one now. Ironman is a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and a 26.2-mile marathon with a time limit.
You're a beast, Dorothy. You really are.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So Ironman, and now you're going to do a triathlete, and you're training for that. When is it?
It's in September.
Okay.
Which is perfect because it gives me enough time to do decent training without rushing it. And I'll do some other, I'm going to do a 10K in town here, and I've got to do at least one short triathlon to get ready for this, because I really didn't race that other one. I was just doing the various events. And I know it just sounds like it sounds like a lot, but depends on your perspective. And then the other thing is, I also another thing I'm carving out time for is I do therapy dog visits with my Newfoundland Justin. And so tomorrow I'm doing a Read to Rover school visit.
Oh, good.
And he loves it and I love it. And it's just it's a fantastic part of my life. So see, that's another one where that's during the day. I will not be here. It got stuck on my calendar back 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Let me ask you, when you go back to, let's talk about Zoom for a minute, because I know that there are business owners that are watching this that are using Zoom. I mean, I was a coach and I coached by phone. Okay. I became so good at listening on the phone. I mean, I could tell when people were tearing up. Like you get so good at doing that, right? Then the pandemic happened. And everybody switched, really. All meetings became virtual, speaking events became virtual, everything became virtual. And so, clearly as a coach, I switched over, and now I do my clients on Zoom, and the importance of it. So for you, share just your, I guess your, I don't know, your philosophy, whatever, just the importance of 1, Zoom, 2, running it well, 3, knowing all the different things that you can do. I don't even know that people know that. So let's dive into that a little bit more.
I'll do a little, do you know? Do you know that you can have a customized video run in your waiting room?
Well, I do know that.
Okay.
Because there's a person that I'm in her mastermind, and she does that.
There you go.
However, I don't have that, but I do know it's possible.
And do you know it's easy to do?
No, that I
really easy to do.
Okay.
Did you know that with the AI tools, I'm speaking specifically to coaches, with Zoom's AI tools, it will automatically generate a next steps list for you. Now, is that valuable with a client or what?
Yeah, nice.
Okay. And that's an easy one. Did you also know with Zoom that you can have a survey or an assessment that automatically pops up on a new screen as soon as the meeting is closed?
For the clients?
Yeah.
Okay. Nope.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. And did you know that if you're doing breakouts, if you're doing one-on-one coaching, this is not as relevant, but if you're doing breakouts, did you know that you can have, let's say you have 3 speakers in a meeting, you can have people select a breakout room to sit with one specific person that they want to learn more from?
That's nice. Yeah. I knew that the host could put people in specific breakout rooms. I mean, it's a whole lot easier when you just do automate, right? And get everybody wherever, but I do know that you can put them in specific. I didn't know that people could pick.
Yes, people can pick. You can title the breakout rooms. Like, let's say you and I were each speakers in a meeting, and we wanted to let people come spend some extra time with either one of us. You could have a breakout room titled Kelly, and you could have another one titled Dorothy. They go in and they choose which one they want to go to. So these are all just simple built-in tools. But because I think like a speaker and trainer, I think about how it would be useful for someone. It's not just like, oh, do this and then do that, then do something else.
Yes.
And it's so those are just a very few key things. And also, did you know recently in Zoom that if you are doing a presentation, right smack on the basic share screen, you can choose to have your image side by side with your visuals. And that's brand new.
My image side by side. I'm going to have to try that.
Okay.
Because it used to be up in the corner, right?
You'd be up in the corner, but this one you can actually choose. If you open your share screen, if you have the current version of Zoom, on the right-hand side of the share screen, you're going to see a new box. That has, I can't remember what it's titled, that you can now choose to have your image there. And then you can go in and you can change the size of your image in that as well.
Oh, that's great.
It's really excellent. Now, again, not quite so much for coaches, but definitely for trainers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. And see, these are all things that I know, and I kind of boil it down to what's going to be useful.
Yes. And so when you talk about events, are you talking about like corporate events? Are you talking about retreats? Are you talking like what kind of events are you talking about?
Pretty much across the board. I mean, I've done production work for a TEDx. I've done production work for a Harvard Business School event. I've done a lot of production work for speakers who are either doing hybrid or true virtual, and where they want someone else there to run the show. And the way I describe it to speakers is I say, any speaker will relate to this. When you arrive at a venue and you go to the meeting room, are you managing the lights?
No.
And are you managing the sound system?
Yeah.
And are you controlling who comes into the room and who doesn't? If you're trying to do your own production, that's effectively what you're trying to do. And what a producer does is they take all of that off your plate so that everything runs seamlessly in the background. And that's what a producer does at an event, whatever the size.
Yeah. I mean, meeting planner, like the same thing. Like if you're running the meetings all the time, whether you're a coach, a speaker, or whatever, if you're just running the meetings all the time, it's the same thing. If you're doing them, like you don't,
Absolutely.
You want someone else handling all the rest of it so you can truly focus on what you need to do and not be worrying about the rest of it.
Exactly. Yes. Because that's what you do well. I mean, the tech is not your thing. And plus you don't want to be distracted. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing I say is that the Zoom meetings today, and people go, oh God, another Zoom meeting. If you can't make a meeting engaging and interactive and branded, you're missing a bet with your business overall. And it can be done, and it can be done pretty easily once you get it set up right. And I'll tell you another truism that I have from Zoom. I would say over 50% of your success in a meeting is set up before you ever get in the meeting. It's how you've done your setup. It's how you've done the branding. It's how you've done your AI. It's how all of those things are set up in advance. And by the time and a run of show, thank you, telling you what you're going to do when, which incidentally, I have a great format for that where people just fill in the numbers and automatically adjust the times.
Nice.
So it's very, very useful. And you have to stick to it exactly. I'm not one that sticks exactly to a script, but at least tells me, am I on schedule? If I'm off schedule, do I know where I am and what do I want to adjust? And that's where a good trainer knows how to adapt.
Yeah, Dorothy, I think that's fabulous. I think this is the same thing in business where, you know what? We need to have people help us do the things that if I don't have time or interest to go and research all the wonderful things that you have learned and and I am doing something that involves all of these things, I need to hire someone.
I agree.
I mean, it's the same thing with social media. It's the same thing with my bookkeeping. You know what I mean? It's just another thing that when you have that team and you become then part of the team that helps people do this part.
Yes, indeed. And it is critical to your overall business success today.
Yes.
Whenever I often will say to people, well, I do Zoom meetings. I said, how many virtual meetings were you in the past week?
Mm-hmm.
And how many of those were really engaging and where you walked away with a positive outcome, or even if it was to-do list results?
Mm-hmm.
You need to put that as your baseline benchmark.
And I really look at all the people that are also, using this type of platform as webinars to get clients, to sell services, to do all that, right? And the more professional, the more things that are going right. And as you said, that you set up on the front end, that then happen on the back end also. I mean, the more successful you're going to be.
Right. And actually, next week, I'm going to be running a free webinar style level up your Zoom, where I'm going to cover some of those, some of those really key new skills and ideas, such as AI and the dual screen and those things. That'll be covered in Level Up Your Zoom.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so before we get to, we're gonna level up your Zoom. We're gonna talk about that in another minute. I always ask this question, and you've hinted to a couple things, but you might say something else here. I want you to share one accomplishment that you're really proud of.
Well, I would have to say, well, first of all, when I first started doing triathlon, I started thinking I'm just going to do a little short stuff. I mean, I wasn't really interested, and I got hooked. I got hooked partially on the feeling good, but also very much on the community around it.
Yeah.
Incredibly supportive community. I don't care if you're first, last, or in the middle. Unbelievable. And so I eventually decided I was going to try to do an Ironman, and I failed. I missed the swim cutoff by 1 minute. And they stripped my time chip and sent me to the recovery tent. And at the time, I swore I will never do this again. It was a bad mistake. I told all all that.
Yeah.
And about 3 years later, I was sitting down with a coach planning what I was going to do. And he said, Dorothy, that Ironman's like a piece of unfinished business. And he was so right. And I said, can you get me to the finish line? Can you get me to the finish line in the time? And he said, absolutely. He said, you were being coached like a 30-year-old when you were 60. And which is a big mistake. And he said, and you didn't have nearly enough swim training. So I said, okay. I started off in that thing. I beat the swim cutoff by 25 minutes.
Wow.
Yep. And I nailed the bike. I did 112 miles in 6.5 hours, which is pretty damn fast. And by then, you know what? I could have walked the darn marathon and still made the time cutoff.
Yeah.
So I finished an Ironman after failing.
And you said, how old were you when you did that?
63.
Y'all. I mean, come on. This is amazing. 63.
Yeah.
Ironman.
But I think the other thing was that I picked up after failing. You fall down, you get back up.
Yep, absolutely. And I love that you, I mean, we can pick ourselves back up and move on. I love the fact that that the coach said this is unfinished business for you, right?
Like as soon as he said that, I thought, oh gosh.
Yeah. And to go back and do it again and, train differently, learn from the mistakes. Like that's just what we do. Right. So, oh my gosh, that's so fabulous.
I'll tell you one more thing.
Yes, go ahead.
That's really funny. I said, okay, I got to go home and talk to my husband. So I came home and I said, I'm planning on doing this. There will be no garden this summer. There will be no trips this summer. There will be no weekends away this summer because that's when you do your long training. And first thing he did is looked at me and said, you're crazy. And then he supported it completely.
It is 100% commitment. I mean, it is commitment. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
so let me let you go on. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, so I just, it's amazing. It's amazing. So, okay, let's go back to where can people connect with you? Because when this is released, y'all, if you're listening to this in real time, like y'all need to connect with Dorothy quickly so that you can jump on this free training that she's having, because you will want to learn or want to hear what she's going to train on, because we just learned that there's so many things we don't know. So go ahead. Where can people connect with you?
You can reach me on LinkedIn, and I will have the training posted there, Dorothy Erlanger.
Okay.
And it's /virtual producer is the way it's listed.
Virtual producers.
You can reach me at a good email is Erlanger, DERLANGER @erlanger-inc.com.
Perfect.
And I'll make sure you put it in the show notes.
Yep, I'll put all that in the show notes.
And I will also give you the link to the Level Up Your Zoom, and also to the training program that comes after that, Zoomies, for you to put in the show notes.
Perfect. Would love that. That's fabulous. Awesome. So listeners, if you are a Zoom user, I highly recommend, well, first of all, as you can see, Dorothy's just an amazing human. So you might want to reach out with her and follow her, because in September, she'll be doing that triathlon. I'm sure she'll be posting things about it. But reach out, connect with her on LinkedIn. And also, if you are someone that uses Zoom or knows anyone that uses Zoom on a regular basis, please reach out, please share this with them and let them know so that they can get on this Level Up Your Zoom free training. And then also what Dorothy has coming up next after that. So Dorothy, thank you for being on today and sharing your wisdom and expertise with us.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. And I've also been enjoying listening to your other segments, your other recordings. It's great. It's really excellent.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll just throw this in at the end. We didn't even say this. Dorothy and we know each other from another group, from a speakers group that we're all in. So it's just nice to connect with you outside of that group. So it's been fabulous. And listeners, again, I'll be back next week. So until then, subscribe, share, and all the things that you need to do these days. And I will see you next week. Until then, rise up and live. Thank you for being a part of the Winning in Business podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to rise up to your next level of success, but are worried about increased stress, time for work and yourself and your family, not to mention being exhausted, I'd like to invite you to a complimentary strategy call where I'll show you how you can do it all. I'll help you reclaim time, keep your sanity, handle the chaos with ease, and move to the next level of success that you deserve and desire. I hope you found value in listening today. Please always leave your comments, feedback, or questions. We check them all. I want you to continue winning in business and reach your next level of success. See you next time.